Mike Sykes, who writes For the Win, which is like an offshoot of USA Today. Jack Vaughn deserves so much more than being an assistant. He deserves a real shot at a head coaching job in the NBA. He proved during his stint as interim coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Vaughn coached the Nets to a 7-3 record, including 5-3 stint with a short roster in the NBA's bubble. And the Nets held their playoff position. Still, somehow it wasn't enough for him to land the job. Yes, this apparently is what a decade of coaching experience gets you in the NBA, a lead assistant job. Tom Ziller says, here's the damning data to me. By my count, there are 9 current NBA coaches who played in the NBA for the same amount of time. 7 of them are white, 2 of them are black. Look, I said this yesterday to Stephen A. Smith. I will say it to some guy named Tom Ziller, who I don't know. I know Stephen A. some. I don't know Mike Sykes at all. It is quite all right. It is absolutely quite all right if you think that the disproportionate number of white to black head coaches is something that needs to evolve and to change. Fine. I'm okay with that. Right? But as I heard Sean Marks say earlier today, none of that actually matters in the context of the Brooklyn Nets job. Okay? One, relationships matter. He has a relationship with Kevin Durant and some sort of relationship with Kyrie Irving, but more importantly, a relationship with Sean Marks. Sean Marks and Jacque Vaughn are friends. They worked together and played together in San Antonio. And the only way you're going to get a championship out of the Brooklyn Nets, which is the goal. You don't sign Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant if you're like, we just want to be decent. Right? You only sign those guys. You only sign Kevin Durant to a 4-year deal, the first year of which he's not even going to play unless you think ultimately we can win a championship. I love Jacque Vaughn. He was one of my idols growing up in Southern California. But the idea that because he coached the team well in the bubble and they went 5-3 and Karis LeVert was awesome, that somehow that means he deserves the head coaching job after already having a head coaching job. Like, that's the missing part. The missing part is he was terrible in Orlando. He was not good. Now, look, some of that is personnel. Remember, he took over a team with an inexperienced GM and a team that was supposed to completely be gutted and start over. They did, and as they started over, they didn't improve at the necessary level, and so he was fired. That happens. Sport is hard. It's really, really hard. But if Jacque Vaughn had a great working relationship where Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and DeAndre Jordan thought this was the guy, they wanted to show solidarity towards that guy, they would have gotten on the plane and flown to Orlando. Trained with the team, sat with the team, cheered with the team, been a part of the team. I can't explain it any further. And this is the issue that most reasonable people have. Reasonable people have. There are issues with race in our country. They are undeniable. They are historic. They are undeniable. By my estimation, and again, this is a white, middle-aged dude, okay, I think there's far less racial issues now than there have ever been. They're just made to be bigger issues because they're on social media. The media picks up on them and blows up a little story into a big story. The perfect example is Charlottesville. The KKK has marched with these little marches all across the country for years. Of course it's disgraceful. Of course it's despicable. There are not good people on that side. But it's made into a big thing because suddenly now we cover it and there's cell phones everywhere and it's on, and you're like, wow, there's this big, and then there was another side and then there's like a riot that ensues. But what I implore writers, reporters, woke media, Stephen A. Smith to do is don't make that your default. Every time a white man is selected instead of a black man, it is not. Race is not the first or even part of the answer, part of the equation. And then there are times that it maybe becomes a factor. Because I didn't hear any of you idiots, okay? Any of you. I didn't hear any of you complaining when Derek Fisher got the Knicks job. I didn't hear any of you say, hey, Jason Kidd, he just got done playing with the Knicks. Now he's head coach of the Nets. Nothing. Isaiah Thomas got a job. He'd never coached a day in his life. The Indiana Pacers. No one said a word. Nothing. And oh yeah, by the way, Steve Kerr got the job. And you can sit here, and by the way, he got the job from Mark Jackson, who got fired. Mark Jackson got that job. He'd never coached a day in his life. Where were you? Where were you? Again, this is, you want to go bigger issue? I agree Black Lives Matter. But if you wanted me to get behind some movement, protest when black people are killed in inner cities by anybody, a little kid, not just police officers. It's despicable crime against innocent kids. Protest that. They all do. They matter. Hey, it's the exact same thing with the Steven Jackson anti-Semitic comments, right? Like you can't sit there and go, hey, we're for equality, but the Jews. Well, what? That is not how it works. Congruent arguments, people. So if you have a problem with somebody getting a job because they don't have head coaching experience, why didn't you have a problem when Mark Jackson, Isaiah Thomas, Derek Fisher, Jason Kidd, Doc Rivers got jobs after being great players, savants as players? Where were you? You weren't. Because it's so easy to play the race card. All he got was an assistant job. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get an assistant job? Do you have any clue? Of course you don't. We have more people covering sports that don't know anything about sports. That's why the Stephen A. Smith thing is so embarrassing. It's embarrassing. You work at the very end of the island of Manhattan. You could swim to Brooklyn and go and meet with Sean Marks and ask, why'd you make this hire? And he would have told you, because he's from Australia. He would have said, hey, listen, I've known Steve a long time. I do a very terrible accent. Everybody loves Steve Nash. And oh yeah, by the way, when you look historically, great point guards usually become great coaches. Derek Fisher wasn't really a point guard, and he wasn't really a great coach, but there were other factors at play. Anyway, I think Jack Vaughn's awesome. If he really had the pull of the superstars, in order to win in the NBA, relationships matter and respect matters. And if they respected Jacque Vaughn as their head coach in waiting, they would have gotten on the plane. And oh yeah, by the way, you can point to Steve Kerr and go like, oh, he got the job. Steve Kerr, up until this year when they had to tank because of injury, if you don't think he's been a better head coach than Mark Jackson, you should ask anybody with a pulse who knows anything about the NBA. He is a spectacular coach. And he does so the exact same way Steve Nash is going to try and do, where you hire people like a Jacque Vaughn that understand the nuances of coaching, and you work on relationships and feel and emotions. Because if you know basketball, being a head coach is not just about taking a whiteboard and drawing up a play at the end of a game. Oftentimes you have an assistant coach who does that. Being head coach is about relationships with your players, having the respect of your superstars, and subtly finding a way to get them to do something they may be uncomfortable doing. Like playing hard on defense, like passing the basketball, like showing up to practice, being a good teammate. If you write an article like this, Mike Sykes, if you write an article where you provide data like Tom Ziller, you should not cover this sport because you clearly don't understand this sport. It is far and away the most progressive and diverse professional sport in the entire world. And you're shadow boxing things that aren't actually attacking you.